EAGLES, Eagles.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to Football Fridays edition of Birds 365, June 28th, offseason. Moving right along. Hope everybody's having a good morning today. Hope everybody, maybe not hope everybody, had a chance to watch what happened last night in our country. I know Johnny Mack said he steered clear of it.
No. I want to alert the media I have a bit of a cold in case I stutter off at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's embarrassing. Both sides. What an embarrassing display. But I digress.
Johnny Mack,
I'm not going to get to that.
Me and you will have some debates today. Maybe not. The difference is me and you aren't going to be leading the country, so we don't have to worry too much about that. But that was a nightmare last night. I'm sure anybody that watched it would agree. Definitely a weird spot we are in our country, but I digress as well. And we will move in to some football. How you doing on this Friday, Johnny Mack? It's June 28th, man. Off season's moving right along.
Yeah, under a month, thankfully, so we can get out, some substantive things, talking about debates rather than speculation. So, I know, what do you got to speculate? Well, then, what else are you going to do this time of year? We that's what we do. We talk about what potentially could go right for this team, what potentially could go wrong. And as always in the NFL, and my buddy Jimmy Kemsky, I mentioned to you before we jumped on here, did his 10 reasons the Eagles could be a dumpster fire. He does it every year for every team in the NFC East. Very funny. You should check it out over at phillyboys.com. And he, put down some of the paths that things could go wrong for the Philadelphia Eagles. And there's probably a few more than there have been in recent years, to be honest, Zander, starting with the coaching staff, because they did a weird thing, trying to marry two things together, which is typically not what you want to do in this league. Typically. Doesn't mean it can't succeed, but typically.
Yeah, it's still going to be an interesting thing to see how it all works together. Just because I'm wondering, where the disconnect is. It certainly does seem like there's a disconnect somewhere on the inside already. I don't want to make too much of it, but it does seem like there's something there. Is it between the quarterback and the coach? Is it between the two offensive guys, the Kellen and Nick? Is it between the front office? We'll talk more about that. What else did Jimmy Kemsky have on his? I'm curious to hear. I mean, the one thing that's beautiful right now to be an Eagles fan, John, and I know you're a reporter of the team. I have a fan-based history. I grew up in this city. I grew up right outside the city, at least. And, I've been a fan of this team since I was a kid. There's not that much in terms of, there's a lot of teams out there that have shit going on. They're not in a good position. We have a good team. We got a good roster. We got a good GM.
Yeah,
we're in a position to compete every year. There's not that much you can really hate on too much. What else did Jimmy Kemsky have on there?
Well, I think most notably the depth. He made the obvious one. If AJ and Devontae go down wide receiver, is going to be a major problem. We've talked about pretty consistently. Now, again, you can't replace players like that. It's not like anybody is going to be able to replace players like that with someone similar, but you would like a little bit more behind them if disaster strikes. And that's the overall depth he went to as well. He mentioned they have good depth at cornerback and quarterback. Everywhere else, not so much to varying degrees. Yeah, and cornerback is unproven, remember. It's a bunch of young guys. Now, we're all very high on them, but they're unproven. I do think they're really good at quarterback. To have a young quarterback, a young backup quarterback who started a bunch of games, that if disaster strikes there, you're not going to be totally overwhelmed with your backup quarterback. But that's a position where needless to say, you never want to lose any starter anywhere. But particularly a quarterback, it's always going to be a pretty significant hit over a long-term period. Not talking about short runs, as people know, with the Super Bowl and Nick Foles here. I'm talking about long-term, 17 games plus the playoffs. You never want to be in that position, but I do think the Eagles have one of the better backup quarterback situations in the league with Kenny Pickett. And, I think there's some other pockets. I'm not quite as willing to go as far as Jimmy saying they don't have depth anywhere else besides those two positions. You could argue in a weird way their backup linebackers are every good as their starters. So it's a bunch of average players probably in long term, but
right.
They're better equipped at linebacker than they usually are.
Yeah, but to your point, if somebody goes down, it might not be. It's not
that big of a deal. It's like the same thing,
right? Exactly.
So it depends, I guess, how you frame it. I do think everybody's like, oh, their defensive line is not the same in the pass rush, and I'm really high on Bryce Huff. I mean, he was crazy productive in limited snaps, and I get it. He played with a lot of good players. The Jets had a good defense. For those that don't know,
because I mean, I saw another ranking, by the way, just linebacker ranking yesterday. Somebody, I forget who it was. Jets were the number one ranked linebackers. I'm like, they were the number one D line. They're the number one ranked.
They got a lot of talent. They got a good secondary. Yeah, they got a lot of defensive talent. But he really is one of those guys that when you watch him on film, the cliched high motor, he's always going. He's always just putting incredible pressure. I don't think, we talk about Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and they have to step up from a conditioning standpoint. I don't think you're going to have to worry about that at all with Bryce Huff, about that jump in playing time. I don't think that's going to affect him at all. And I think, I think he's going to have a big season. And if I'm wrong and the Eagles are wrong, they think that as well, obviously, then it's probably not going to be good. But that's the trick in the NFL, evaluating players.
Yeah.
I think they evaluated that one correctly. There's another one I think they evaluated incorrectly. I'm tired of talking about it, and I've given you all the reasons. But I think they got that one right, and I don't think a lot of people agree with me because, again, he's undrafted. I wrote about Reed Blankenship yesterday. Until Justin Simmons decides, where he's going to play next year, until Eddie Jackson, it's not going away. But everything the Eagles have told you is they believe this guy's a starting safety. If you watched him last year, he's one of the best players on the Eagles defense. Now, tallest short guy in the circus, you might say, but still, people have a tough time getting over that undrafted label. Same thing happened with TJ Edwards. Good player, still a good player in Chicago. I saw a linebacker thing yesterday. It might have been the 33rd team, might have been Pro Football Focus. I don't know. They had the Bears at 2 or 3. And TJ Edwards is their best linebacker. Now, they paid Tremaine Edmonds more, but TJ's their best linebacker. At some point you got to get off that hill and say, all right, this guy can play. And that's where I am with Reed Blankenship, who, by the way, if you look at PFF rankings last year, played better than Justin Simmons, played better than Eddie Jackson. But people know those names, so they think they're better.
Yep, good stuff there from Johnny Mack. I want to welcome everybody in this morning. Paul's a big pickleball player. Paul said he won 6 of 9 pickleball games last night. His right elbow and arm is fully healed. He's back at it. Good stuff, Paul Mancini. Maybe we'll get you to link up with Nick Foles and friend of the network, Rick Perry. Did you know that, Johnny Mac? Rick Barry is like a world
Is he?
pickleball champion. Yeah.
Doesn't surprise
Yeah,
me.
we have him on JAKIB all the time. So Rick Barry, Paul, we'll have to put you in touch with those guys. Good morning, everybody. Some Black Ninja, what's going on? He says, Zander, you got your power back yet? We did get it back last night at around 5:30 at night. So shout out to the workers, man. They really do work, Johnny Mac. I was talking to a couple of the guys, and I'm like, man, I talk about sports for a living. Like, thank you guys for coming out here and giving me power and doing things that really help our society and they
Well,
work.
people lose their mind when they don't have their Wi-Fi
Oh,
power.
they really
I
do.
mean,
And
whew,
people give them a hard time. I did not give
yeah,
them a hard time. I grabbed them some water and I said, thank you guys. Look, it happened at like midnight, right? The night before, or like 11:45. There's trucks, there's people, people there till 2 a.m. clearing the initial falls, clearing the things that are if anybody's in danger. Then they're back at 6 a.m. They didn't leave last night till 9, 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I'm just like, these guys are working, man, all the time, and it's important work. So thank you for anybody that's that does work like that. That's important stuff, and we appreciate you guys. As always, we're just talking sports, like I said. But good morning, everybody. We appreciate all you guys for being here. Cody K, Daz, Corey, Flexen, Crowley, Suplex. What's going on, everybody? We appreciate it for being here. Johnny Mac, let's go back to Bryce Huff, though. You seem optimistic on him, and that makes me feel better, to be honest, because I know you're very objective and you're not, saying that in an eagle-colored glasses type of mode. But to be honest, throughout the course of the offseason, it's been one of the things I've been the opposite on. I've been concerned that it's not that I don't like the player, it's that I think you took a step back in terms of talent, and on a defense that stunk out loud last year, is that going to have bigger implications? Now, you make a good point. I mean, I think that maybe as a collective unit that the pass rushers will live up to it, or will at least give us the production that we need from that position. But I don't feel that great about Bryce Huff. Maybe it's because I'm factoring too much into how good that Jets defense is, where there's nobody paying attention to him. But he might get a little bit of that here. I mean, people are probably going to be paying attention to Jalen Carter a lot. Jordan Davis has taken up 2 blockers, or if he's not, he's going to get through the line. So, I mean, I guess he could have a better situation here, but he certainly doesn't have the linebackers behind him. He doesn't, there's other elements of the defense don't exist here in Philly, where the onus is going to be more on him. There's going to be more pressure. There's going to be more snaps. There's going to be, things that he has to be better than he was in New York, or at least play more. And I'm curious to see how he does it, but it makes me feel better that you're optimistic on the player.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he has to play better. I think he has to play similarly, just in many more snaps. But yeah, the Jets have a very talented defense. I'm just higher on that guy than most, because I do think, pressure translates more than sacks. And his pressure numbers were just outrageous in limited time, granted. So, that's the trick of the NFL. You're trying to find an ascending player versus a descending player. Now, Hassan came off just an historic, one of the best Eagles defensive seasons, I dare say, in franchise history in 2022. He wasn't the same guy last year, and he was among the group. Everybody, basically. You can't point anybody and say, all right, this guy's doing it, especially down the stretch. He was invisible too. So, and one thing I think the Eagles, and this is why they've contradicted themselves, and this is why I think they made one good decision, one typical, and we'll talk to Dama about this. I see he popped in the green room, so I'm going to shut up so we can get the break. But, Hupp doesn't have a lot of tread off the tire. Hassan does. And they pay attention to that. Typically, on the offensive side, they didn't. For the first time in a long time, they looked at 1,500 touches and said, all right, that's not a big deal. Hassan Reddick's snap numbers since he broke out in Arizona are crazy. So there's a lot of tread off the tire. He's played a lot of football. I'm not a lot of successful football. But the Eagles are really keen to that kind of stuff. And when they rode him into the ground in that run to the Super Bowl, and maybe they rode him into the ground. If you get my point,
I do.
Maybe, maybe the decline has started. Bryce Hupp is a young player that has all the tread left on the tire.
Samurai Hassan. I'm not sure if you saw the videos of him walking around. I don't know where he was, Japan or something, and he's got the sword and the whole outfit on, and I was cracking up at that. I thought that was pretty funny. But welcome in, everybody. Thanks for being here. Let's get to our first commercial break. We'll have Paul Domowitch in hour number 1, so him coming up after the break, and then in hour number 2, we'll have Ed Krause. So excited to talk to both of our guests today. Good stuff to talk about with them, so we'll get to them. Terrence, as I said, good morning to everybody except him. Sorry, brother. I'll get you. Where are you at? Let me find Terrence. There he is. Good morning, Terrence. What's going on, man? Anybody I missed, I apologize for missing you, but I do recognize you. I appreciate you for being here. Let's get to our first commercial break. Make sure you guys drop a like on the show. Stay tuned. Paul Domowitch coming up next.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Football Friday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Paul Domowitch, Hall of Fame selector, longtime reporter for the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best to do it here in the city. Domo, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Damo. I don't know how much you heard when you popped in the green room there, but Jimmy, our buddy Jimmy Kemsky, came out with his dumpster buyer series, which is always fun. People enjoy, and he did the Eagles today, and we got into talking about some of the things he was saying, and one of them, I'm a little bit higher than most people, not, and it's all projection, is that the Eagles pass rush will be better, I think, than people think, because mainly I look at Bryce Hupp and I say, I think that guy's going to be a pretty good player. and he's very young. He hasn't played a lot. When I talk about, but when you watch him on film, he doesn't strike me, Dom, as the guy who's going to have trouble playing a lot of snaps. Like, we're worried about the conditioning of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and there's a reason, because they were forced to play a lot of snaps, and they need to get better at the conditioning aspect. Certainly not from the talent perspective of Jalen, but from a conditioning aspect. And you can go back to their days at Georgia and, the rotational system, because they had so much talent there. They're not used to it, and that's a process. Bryce Huff is one of those guys that just comes and he's like Brandon, in the fact that he's always, the motor is always at 100. He's always coming. So he might be unsuccessful, but I don't think it's going to be because of the snap number. So I think it's a very Eaglesy decision. There, you have a player who's played a lot of snaps, maybe he's starting the downside of his career, and they're trying to swap him out. I think it might work. I'm a little bit higher than most people. Where are you on that scale?
Yeah, I mean, they swapped him out, but I mean, it was mostly motivated by Hassan's demand for more money, and that's where the tread on the tire comes in. I mean, I don't think if Reddick was willing to play under his contract and didn't make waves,
oh yeah, he'd be
I don't
back.
think there would have been a trade.
No.
It's just that they looked at the investment here. I mean, that's where you look at the tread tire and the snaps and say, are we going to get our money's worth from this guy if we pay him a load of money? How many productive All-Pro years does he have left? And I think they decided then that there weren't enough. So that's why they traded him. The question, I mean, Huff's not going to have any trouble playing a lot of snaps. My question is he going to have any trouble playing quality snaps?
Yeah.
We don't know that. They feel confident that they know that. But again, he's not been asked to do what he's going to be asked to do this year in Vic's defense. So I guess we'll see in time. But he's a young player, an ascending player who can rush the passer, and that's what it's all about. So we'll see.
Speaking of players that rush the passer, Nolan Smith is a guy that's starting to get a little bit more eyes, a little bit more pressure. I'm starting to hear a little bit more people talk about, him stepping up. He is a first-round draft pick. What do you expect from Nolan this year?
Well, again, I mean, he didn't play much last year. When he did, it wasn't like we said, "Wow, we need to see more of this."
He did, Tomo. He claimed.
So I mean, he needs to be productive. I mean, this defensive line can be good, but there are a lot of question marks right now, and Nolan Smith clearly is one of them. But he needs to step up. He needs to play like he, like a first rounder that he was. And if that doesn't happen, then all eyes fall on Howie for drafting him.
Yeah, and I think it's a big year on the interior for Milton Williams as well. I think he's got a chance to make a lot of money, Damo, coming into a contract year. Obviously, in theory, he's going to get a lot of those Fletcher Cox snaps. They're going to be divvied up. So you're still going to build the defense on Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, but Milton's going to be a big part of it. And I think he's a good player. And I'm surprised a little bit that the Eagles haven't pushed, and maybe they have behind the scenes, to get him extended. But, that's a difficult one, because maybe if you're Milton Williams, you're looking at it and saying, all right, I'm going to bet on myself because I'm going to get more snaps.
Yeah.
You're going to put up more numbers, and that number goes up. So that's a little bit more of a difficult negotiation. I'm sure the Eagles are trying to get the cost-effective deal done. But Milton Williams, bigger part of this team than most realize, Dama?
I think he's been under the radar. I mean, his appeal is in his versatility. You can move him around a little bit. I mean, in college, he played end and tackle. He can do the same here. I think Vic will move him around. And I'm not surprised that they didn't redo him. he played at an even level. My guess is, like you said, he probably thinks he's about ready to break out and that he can make a killing after this season. And they weren't willing to pay him. They weren't willing to overpay him right now. So I think both sides will be willing to wait till the end of the year. But I mean, he's a nice chess piece to have because of the versatility. I don't think he's ever going to make a Pro Bowl, but he's a good guy to have.
How about the depth at that room, Damo? I mean, you have Jalen, you have Jordan Davis. Technically, they're both unproven. I think we've seen enough to be confident in them.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think Jalen Carter's proven himself.
I do too. I really do too. But he did 10, 11 games, John. We got to see a little bit more, I would say. But I'm not questioning the talent there. But what about after them, Damo? I mean, I think Milton's a great piece, but is that enough, or should Howie be looking to add a move there? Or maybe it's another 22 situation where you add a guy late like a Sue and a Linval Joseph. In that case, maybe somebody like that comes along to bolster the depth. But what do you think of the depth at that position?
Well, I mean, after that, they've got some guys that can. I guess the best word to use is serviceable. Yeah. I mean, guys like Mustafa, who they added, Ajomo, Tuiapo.
Marlon T. Don't forget Marlon.
Yeah. So, I mean, they got guys that can go out there and give them some snaps, and Phil, gives these other guys some breathers in a rotation. But it all comes down to Davis and Carter stepping up and being Pro Bowl players this year.
Yeah, and Jalen was interesting because for whatever reason, I mean, he was second in Defensive Player of the Year, but Rookie Defensive Player of the Year voting to Will Anderson. You could argue he should have been first still, but they made the playoffs. That to me was about their late run versus the Eagles' collapse. I think Jalen was the best player, defensive player in last year's draft class. Do you have any concerns about him from that perspective, or is it all just conditioning and maybe maturity, some of those types of issues?
I don't have any concerns about his ability, John. His head is what the only concern I have is whether whether the drive is there to keep getting better and better. He doesn't have Fletcher around now to kick his butt. We'll see. I think he's, I mean, most of these guys eventually grow up, and I think he will too. And if he does, and if he stays in shape, I think he can be a terrific player and a difference-making player in the middle there. Because I think, that's where, every great pass rush, including theirs 2 years ago, has to get inside pressure.
Yeah.
Tom, let's go to the offensive side of the ball. I want to bring up something that is close to Johnny Mac's heart. He's been in a lot of the discussions this offseason with me and many of our other guests about it. What's your evaluation or what's your expectation for how the Philadelphia Eagles will use Saquon Barkley this year? I mean, they made the big signing. I'm okay with the money aspect of it, but Howie's kind of set the stage. This is an elite, game-changing type of player. How do you think the Eagles are going to use Saquon Barkley in this offense?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this in the past, Zander. I mean, I think he's going to be used more in the passing game than maybe John does, or it will be more effective in the passing game than John does. I mean, you can use your running backs without – I mean, the perception is that you're just dumping it out to them, and that's not – I mean, there's guys you get the ball to in space that can do some great things, and I think, Barkley's one of them. And by getting him the ball that way, it also doesn't take the pounding that giving him the ball 300 times a game inside does. Now, he's going to run the ball a lot. There's no doubt about that. But this is going to be a passing offense. I mean, they believe that's how you win in this league, and that's what they're going to do. I mean, again, I said this last week. I think we're going to see a lot of two-back stuff with Gainwell and Barkley, and then one of them will eventually probably motion into the slot or outside or somewhere and be used in a lot of different ways in the passing game. So, I think that's where Barkley can make a difference this year. I don't expect him to put up 1,500 yards. That's just not going to happen because I don't think he's going to get the ball enough to put up those kind of numbers, but he can be a 1,000-yard rusher this year. But I think he can also be a guy that catches 70 passes in the passing game and makes a difference there for not only himself and the offense, but for guys like Brown and Devontae Smith, who suddenly are going to be a lot more open than they were at the end of the last season when people were sticking on him like glue, because that's where Jalen was looking.
Any concern about the tread? Sorry, gentlemen. Any concern about the tread? I mean, he played a lot of snaps. That's a consistent theme too with running backs in the NFL, especially over the last decade. Teams just don't pay running backs second contracts. They try and get them on their, in their rookie contracts when they're young and good and their legs are fresh, and a lot of them burn out quick. Any concern about Saquon's tread on the tires?
Oh, sure. I mean, you mentioned second contracts. I mean, Eagles haven't given any to running backs. That was since,
they got burned by DeMarco Murray.
Yeah. We got to go way back to, I guess,
for the Eagles, you got to go back to, I guess,
Shady. But that's why Zander, I think they'll use him a lot in the passing game, because it doesn't take as big a toll on a running back's legs as it would be if he's, you're just handing him the ball and pointing him to the line.
Well, here's what I and I'm not saying to you, Damo, but for a lot of people that criticize me about the Barkley stuff, and there's a lot of them. To me, it's mainly about the quarterback. Like, if you go back to Nick's last season in Indianapolis, when he had Nyheim Hines and, more importantly, had Phillip Rivers, Nyheim caught 60-something balls. And Jonathan Taylor was in the 30s, mid-30s as their two running backs, because that's the way Phillip Rivers played the position.
Right.
I don't think Jalen plays the position. So I think we've been through this every year in the Jalen Hurts era. First, it was Miles, and you remember, a lot of people forget, Miles showed some real solid. As a rookie, he was better than we all thought as a receiver. You remember the big Carson Wentz pass in Washington, Dama? We're like, where did this come from? Yeah. And he was looking good, and he's going to be, Miles might be a better receiver. No, he got progressively worse as it went on. Then they got Kenny Gainwell until all the fans turned on him. Not all, but a lot of them. He was a hell of a receiver in college at Memphis, to the point he missed the COVID season, but to the point they played him a slot receiver. He was a big-time receiver, and he's been all right. He can catch the football. There's no issues with that. And then they got DeAndre Swift, who was really good in Detroit in the NFL as a receiving back. Now, there were a lot of questions about him as a runner, but not as a receiver. And the Eagles got him. And I remember week one, Dama, they're playing New England. They got him working out with the receivers. This Bill Belichick. Oh, we might use this guy. We might put him out. Nothing. And here we are again with the same thing. I think it has more to do with the quarterback. It's not what he wants to do. It's not a strength. And can he get better at it? Sure. But do you want him to do you want to change him as a player? I don't necessarily want to change him into Phillip Rivers. To utilize the back like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think you have to change him to get him to be a little bit better at throwing to the running backs. I mean, you got to use them in today's game. And, you look at last year, it's kind of an interesting situation. You look at the number of catches by their running backs, it was pretty damn high. I mean,
it's not bad.
It was considerably higher than the year before. What was awful was the yards
efficiency, efficiency,
and a lot of that had to do with Jalen when he was getting him the ball or the offense. I mean, I think that's what's going to change. I don't think Jalen's averse to throwing to those guys. I mean, he's working out with Saquon Barkley. They ain't doing that for laughs.
No, he's working out with Johnny Wilson too.
He doesn't want him to get familiar with his handoffs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just that, that they need to get these guys the ball in space in better positions than they did last year. Where they
there's that, with DeAndre and to be quite honest, DeAndre's not here because he didn't like the offense. Philadelphia guy and all, because he wanted the ball more in the passing game. And I thought, you think about those bubble screens, and I remember saying back in training camp, Damo, why don't you use DeAndre Swift on the bubble screens? Maybe you got a running back out there who can break a tackle or make somebody miss rather than a receiver who's not quite as good as that type of thing. They never did it. I don't know. I just, to me, I call it off-season talk. And I look more at the quarterback. Like I said, there's certain guys that are going to use running backs. And then from the second part of it, Saquon has never proven to be, forget about Christian McCaffrey. Even I think the two best receiving backs after Christian have been Kamara and Aaron Jones. He's never been those guys. Those guys can catch the ball down the field. They can do some things. I've just never seen that from Saquon. Now, maybe it's the supporting cast.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. It's a lot easier when Aaron Rodgers is throwing wheel routes to Aaron Jones than Daniel Jones. So maybe that's it. But boy, it seems like I go through it every year with this incarnation of Eagles. If Phillip Rivers came out of retirement, I'm all on board. Saquon's going to be a big part of the passing game. Right now, I don't think he's going to be a big part of the passing game, but we'll see. And I hope I'm wrong. And I hope for all Eagles fans, I'm wrong. And I get why we talk about skill position players, Damo, but that's where I want to go next with you. The offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know Brandon Thorne, but he's one of those guys on Twitter and X and social media. He's one of the best offensive line people. When you talk about digesting the league as a whole, he graded the Eagles offensive line, even without Jason Kelce as number 2. Warren Sharp, another great football guy, had him at number 4. This is still the strength of the football team, the offensive line. We all talk about skill position, but it's the offensive line. Nothing matters until those guys get involved. And when they start pushing people around, that's where the Eagles are going to win and lose games. Am I incorrect or correct?
You are correct, John, as always. No, I mean, regardless of the change at center, I mean, yes, they lost a Hall of Famer, but they basically still have 3 All-Pro players at left and right tackle and left guard. So as long as they're there, I mean, the time to worry will be when Lane Johnson retires in probably 10 years. But
yeah, he might keep going. Lane's in great shape.
I'm assuming everything Kellen Moore is going to do this year is with that, the fact that he's got because he had one in Dallas. He knows what to do with a strong offensive line. They had, because that was one of the best lines in the league as well.
Yeah.
What do you make of staying on the offensive line? What do you make of the situation here with Mekhi Becton? It's interesting to me because he's on a 1-year deal, but I don't know if you heard his press conference comments. He really likes Jeff Stoutland, and he seems to really like playing here in Philadelphia. Not that he's played here long, but he seems to like the atmosphere, likes the coaching and stuff like that. He's a tackle. I think, should they try and put him in at guard? I mean, to me, I would love to have him be the guy maybe that Stoutland can coach up and you have him there to replace Lane Johnson. But like you just said, Lane might play for another 3-4 years. Like, who knows when that could be. Is putting him at guard a good move? And do you think the Eagles will give him a legitimate chance to win that job over Tyler Steen?
Well, it's an interesting question, Zander. We'll see. I mean, the thing about Stout is, he took a guy that never played football and has turned him into a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
What's he going to do with a first-round pick? A guy. I mean, granted, Mekhi Becton has not been the player everybody thought he would be when he got drafted. But if anybody can, take him to that level, certainly it's Stoutland. Now, you're right. Do you just keep him there as a safety valve in case your tackles get hurt, or do you think about moving him inside and using a big body there? They like big tackles. I mean, that's pretty clear. I mean, there's a reason. That that they with their left guard that they kept him there instead of thinking about moving him to center. So yeah, I think it's something they're obviously considering. Only time will tell whether they use him there or not.
Yeah, maybe one of your next books, Damo, should be about Jordan Mailata. Boy, every once in a while I step back and I think, how crazy is that? It's just, and now we take it for granted. It changes so quickly, and now he's one of the best left tackles in football. That's insane from where he came from. He needed help putting on his helmet. He didn't know how to put on a helmet, and now he's a leader. I heard Kelsey talking about his celebrity bartending thing. I heard somebody asked him about Jordan, and it was about a leadership question, and Kelsey actually went to Jordan. It's like people gravitate towards him. That is one that's going to go down as whoever you want to give credit for that. Obviously Stout for the development, but Howie for finding him. I remember that story. Stoutland was on a golf vacation, and Howie called him up and said, "You got to look at this guy."
Yeah.
And he went down to Florida. He's working out at IMG. That is just a crazy story. And I'm sure someone will tell it at some point better. But even the day of his first start, it just was a timing thing. I don't know if you remember, Dama, we had happened to get Stoutland for some reason. And even he was like, "I don't know. I think he's ready." But I remember that. He's like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
And it was against Nick Bosa. And we're all like, this is going to be a disaster. And he goes out there against maybe the best pass rusher in football. And he was damn good. He got beat a couple times, but he was damn good from day one. It's an amazing story. Joe Osman's a part of it as well. Smoking Joe. He used to beat him like a drum in practice and turned him into this great player. It's a tremendous story. Every once in a while, I like to talk about it to remind myself of just how crazy it is that they developed this guy into what he is. He's gotten 2 $60 million extensions. When does that happen?
I've said this many times that on Stout's tombstone, it's going to say, I developed Jordan Mailata. I made a guy that never played football an all-pro.
Yeah. And, but then there's the Andre Dillard. It's crazy. Now, how much skill did Andre Dillard have? And, he didn't turn into what he was supposed to be. So it's not as easy as sometimes fans presume it is to get these players to where they need to be. And I guess we'll go there with the coaching staff. That's another one where Jimmy put in his dumpster fire series as a potential thing that can go off the rails, and I'm with them 100%. I don't from moment one, Damo, I never liked this plan. To me, they look like they're trying to straddle a fence. Well, we don't want to get rid of Nick, but we want to bring in new ideas. I don't like that. It can work. Anything can work, but typically that's not the way you do it, right?
No, I mean, we've talked about the CEO coach and everything, but I'm sure Nick is not. This clearly wasn't his choice. Which I think as you guys have probably talked about it since it's happened. Jaworski's comments about Jalen's reaction when he was asked a while back about Nick.
Yeah,
a lot of that. Goes to the fact that Nick didn't have a lot of say in this. I guarantee you he was told you're getting rid of Brian Johnson, and I guarantee you that Jalen's still trying to get over that. Even though he and Brian were not on the same page last year, Brian still was a good friend, and now he's learning a new offense again, and so I was not surprised, or have not been surprised, that there's not a lack of enthusiasm, that we haven't heard him say, "Gee, I love this offense. I can't wait to play it." I mean, it's going to take time. It's going to take time for him to get over the fact that they fired Johnson so abruptly. I agree with you, John, but I think they're in a better place with Kellen Moore running this offense and Nick just kind of having some input. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I think it's a good thing overall. If it works out, obviously it's a big if. But last one for me, Damo. What do you think of Dallas Goedert in this offense? Kellen Moore is a guy that likes to go to his tight end. I'm one of the people that thinks Dallas Goedert has been underutilized in this offense. Maybe it's a Jalen Hurts thing. He just doesn't seem to, go to the middle of the field too much. At least he struggled with it last year. What do you think Dallas Goedert can be in this offense with Kellen Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I think he needs to be a bigger part of it, especially on third down. I mean, they were a good third down team last year, but they still. I mean, they need to use Dallas. It takes the pressure off everybody else in that offense. So, he had 50. He's a 55 catch guy most of his career here. We talk about him being the greatest. One of the best. Blocking tight ends in the league that can also catch passes, but that number needs to be bigger. I mean, 2 years ago, he led the league in among tight ends in yards after the catch, but still, I think Jalen needs to rely on him more. And you're right. I mean, Kellen Moore has probably been emphasizing that a lot this offseason. Doesn't mean he's telling him to go away from AJ and Devontae but that's why. I lump Dallas into the same category as Saquon and Gainwell. I mean, these are guys you got to give the ball to in the passing game. Doesn't have to be. I'm not saying they have to catch. The Dallas has to catch 10 passes a game, but you got to spread that ball around to all these guys. It'll make the offense better, and it's something that they didn't do enough of last year. He became too focused on those two wide receivers.
Yep. Agreed.
At P Damo, make sure you follow Damo on X. Does work for the 33rd team, does work here for us, does a tremendous job. Merrill Station, WBCB during the season. One number that doesn't have to get bigger, Damo, I'll end it here with you, is the 4-point-something billion the NFL got gashed with for gouging people for years on Sunday Ticket. There will be many, many appeals, many lawyers, as Andrew Brandt says. I don't know if it'll end up there. But, man, if they eventually got to pay out numbers like that, and because it was antitrust, it can go up to $14 billion. It can be times 3. That's going to affect the product on the field at some point, isn't it? Isn't that going to scale back things?
Well, I mean, God knows how long it's going to take before all these appeals are heard.
Yeah.
And this one's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Talk to me in 2030.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm just saying, man.
Sorry for the league, for the.
I'm not feeling sorry for them. They were gouging people. All you had to do was give out of market. It was the simplest thing.
I know.
Out of market, pay-per-view. If you're an Eagles fan living in Bismarck, North Dakota, wherever, $14.99 by the game, but they gouged them for hundreds of dollars for many, many years for everybody to get the whole product. I don't feel bad for them. It's the exact opposite. The one thing, it's always about money. This is going to be significant if it stands. And you're right. It's going to go probably the Supreme Court.
The NFL has not. I mean, their history in court has not been great. I mean, you go back.
No. You know why? Because they never want to go to. They never want to have Goodell under oath and to get in those situations. So they're willing to settle. Right. I assume they'll be willing to settle down the road because they don't want to air out the dirty laundry ever. Because there's some dirty laundry there.
I mean, their court cases have changed the whole history of the NFL. I mean, you go back to free agency, which the players got in a court case. You go back to the 80s. I mean, they lost to the USFL in an antitrust case. The only reason that there would have been some USFL teams in the NFL, if not for the fact that the USFL decided to use Donald Trump as its face in that court case, and the jury awarded them $1. $1. They had such disdain for Donald. So
$1.
Yeah, I mean, they're not very good in court, but this one's gonna, like Zander said, this one's gonna go to 2030 before they give up. and pay the money.
Well, yeah, they can't give up on this one. They can't. But yeah, everybody can bookmark the site. You're going to get some money at some point. So if you've been paying for that thing, yeah, and the NFL deserves it. They've been gouging people for years,
Absolutely.
and they continue to gouge people. But I don't know if you're willing. I always talk about merchandising, Damo. I'm like, I'm surprised I haven't gone to the Oregon route on college where they have like a different uniform every week, different helmet. They've always struggled. I'm like, if the people allow you to pick their pockets, you might as well pick their pockets. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be very long before we see advertising strewn all across their uniforms.
Yeah. I'm surprised we aren't there as well.
I
Yeah,
know.
everybody
I
else
really am
does.
too. Other sports leagues are all over. NBA's got them on the jersey. Even the NHL added helmets this year. I mean, it's definitely coming. Damo, thanks for the great insight today. As always, you do a great job. You bring great insight to the show every single Friday. We appreciate you being here. Thanks, Damo. Appreciate it, man.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Paul Domowitch joining us on Birds 365. Great stuff from Damo. As always, Johnny Mac, I want to pick your brain on that NFL thing when we come back a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid. I need you to explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader here. I know it's a problem, but like they weren't like forcing people to pay for this product. I mean, isn't it just kind of the nature of the beast? If you don't live somewhere where that game is being televised, you're going to have to, make big strides to get it. I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding it fully, but it doesn't really feel like the NFL is that at fault.
Well, they're not at fault until somebody complains, and a bunch of people complain, and then it comes into an antitrust case, and you have, it comes to light because remember, when you're a monopoly in this country, they will break it up at certain points, and baseball is the one sport for many years because it was America's pastime. We talk about that had protection from that kind of stuff, but the NFL does not have protection from being monopoly. They are monopoly, and if enough people complain about it, and that's what's going on here, and all of a sudden you have that type of level of case and antitrust violations, class action where you get a whole group of people together. Lawyers are a part of it as well because they see an opportunity to cash in, so they grab a whole bunch of people who've been overpaying for this product, and there's no competition. It's a tough thing to argue in court. So from that standpoint, it's no surprise that the judgment came. Will it hold up over time in appeals? That's the tougher case. And the NFL has a ton of money to keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting. So that's where those big entities tend to win out because nobody can spend as much as them, not only for the legal counsel and the effectiveness of the legal counsel, but to be able to take things to that level, you got to have deep pockets. And they have deep pockets.
Legal fees are unbelievable, though, Johnny Mac. Like you see some of these people. I mean, you see billionaires, and in some cases, or multi-millionaires, 100 millionaires that they go bankrupt because of legal fees. Like legal fees can be really crazy, especially in a case of this magnitude. It's unbelievable how much stuff costs.
I know Florio. Florio's a lawyer by trade. Obviously, he doesn't practice. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk. He estimated it's been going on for 10 years. He estimated their attorney's fees are already about anywhere from 50 million to 100 million. Well, there's not a lot of people that can afford to wink. Basically, that's nothing for them.
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of people that can fight with that over a long period of time.
Pretty insane. Let's go to our buddy Terry here. Look at this, $20 from our man Terry. Terry, thank you, bro. That support of the show, the support of the network goes a long way. Can't thank you enough for that type of super chat. We appreciate it very much, brother. He says, Terry Hayes, $20 says, I'm excited to see how this team's going to play. I just have a feeling it's going to be fun to watch. I agree with that, Terry. I'm most excited about the offense. I think Kellen's going to surprise a lot of people and be really good. I'm hopeful, but we'll see. He says, just had our balcony catch fire and some fire damage and a lot of water damage in my apartment. Geez, Terry, I should be sending you $20, brother. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everybody is safe in your family and all your friends and everybody. But again, thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the support of Birds 365 and of JAKIB Sports. We appreciate it very much, more than you know. Let's get to our commercial break. Terry, thanks again, man. We really do appreciate that. Let's get to our commercial break. Johnny Mac, 20 minutes away from our man, Ed Kratz, who's been really bringing some good comedic relief to the show recently. I've been loving the segments with Ed, so we'll talk to Ed in about 20 minutes. Stay tuned, everybody, on the Friday edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Friday edition of Birds 365, June 28th, 70 days away from the Philadelphia Eagles kicking off in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That'll be the Friday night.
Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Sao Paulo, whatever it is. And then 69 days away from the Thursday night opener of the NFL. It's so close you can almost taste it, Johnny Mac. It's like we're coming up so quick. I remember doing the show and it was like 90 days. Now we're down to 70 days. Time really does fly. So we are getting ready for, the season coming up, training camp coming up. Everything is right around the corner. So enjoy your summer. Enjoy these hot days. Before we know it, we'll be ready to rumble with the season back here. So good stuff coming from the Philadelphia Eagles. Good stuff coming from the NFL. Exciting times. Johnny Mac, let me just real quick talk to you about that NFL thing real quick. What is the premise of the case? Because I didn't read it much, so I'm not overly
by the way, I had my Joe Biden moment. What I was looking for is the league never wants Roger Goodell in discovery. It's one of the things that it's one of the things where if they ever wanted to move on from Roger Goodell, that would be one of the biggest reasons, because they can go into some of these court cases, and if you have a new guy in charge, you can say, well, he can play that game. I wasn't there. I don't know. Blah blah blah. Play that game. You don't want Roger Goodell under discovery and airing some of that dirty laundry. But I mean, the antitrust case, it's basically boils down to price gouging and what they've been doing to consumers. In a class action suit, it's no surprise in the fact that, again, it is a monopoly. I mean, and the NFL will argue that, well, the UFL exists, and in the past, other leagues have existed. And by definition, there's some competition, I guess, because, people seem to be willing to keep going with spring football and try other avenues. And Damo kind of mentioned, going back to the USFL lawsuit, where the USFL won that case, but they only were awarded $1 in damages. A lot of it because of, the dislike and that type of thing. So, yeah, is this excessive? You're going to have so many things to go on appeal, because, again, basically, and it's very complicated, but basically you take the damages. So, it was in under 5 billion, 4.7, I think, was the actual number. And you times that by 3. So you're talking about well over 14 billion at that point. Ultimately, that's what everybody's fighting over. Now, then you have everything from attorney's fees and on back. So the people won't get to see the full 14 billion, to say the least. But if it comes down through all the appeals process, and it ends up upholding that judgment, people who bought Sunday ticket over the time frame it was, and it's about 12 years, I think, they're going to get, thousands of dollars under this settlement, probably, I don't, $2-3 grand, somewhere in that range. So it's a long way to go, but it would be a significant hit to the NFL. Where are we and are people, I think it's going to end up in the Supreme Court, and they're going to make the decision. And, if it goes that far, you're opening up Pandora's box, and probably everybody price gouges. So, that's the thing you always have to be concerned with the Supreme Court, because when a court case, and I use the Tom Brady court case, and we're probably getting too down in the weeds. We got a lot of viewers, so we should probably get back to the Eagles. But the Tom Brady, I think a lot of people didn't understand Deflategate, which went all the way to the Supreme Court, and Ted Olson told them he couldn't win. So that's when they gave up. They thought it was about deflating footballs. At that point, it was about only, does the NFL have the right to discipline Tom Brady? That's what they were deciding. Not did he deflate football.
Right.
It's very nuanced. And when they make a decision, it has impact far beyond sports or far beyond a particular case. It is now the law of the land, so to speak, of the entire country for every business. So when it comes to collectively bargain business is like the NFL, where the NFLPA agrees to certain things, and those types of cases, they rarely overturn things like that because they don't want to open that Pandora's box. When it comes to antitrust, do they want to open up that Pandora's box to everything else that's a monopoly, but not really a monopoly? That's going to be the real question.
Yeah, deep stuff there. So we'll see what the NFL does. I'll tell you what, if you bought that, though, and you're getting 2 to 3 G's, it's a pretty penny. Add that to however many people it is. You are right. It's a big financial hit there. So let's get it back to the Eagles coming off that. So I digress. But Johnny Mac, what do you think of one of Jimmy Kempski's things? I read over his article in the break there. One thing that I liked, that stood out to me is that the defensive line hinges on two guys that were out of shape in 23. No, they weren't out of shape, but they didn't have the wherewithal to go the full season.
Blame Kirby Smart.
Too many good players in Georgia. He's just rotating them all out. None of these guys played significant snaps, or at least by the NFL standard.
But no, I mean, they have to get better conditioning. It's fair. And Jordan Davis was talking about giving up the Arizona tees and all that kind of stuff, and and he certainly looks better from but I never thought he looked, when you talk about 350-pound people, I never thought that he looked woefully out of shape. But it doesn't matter. And Jalen Carter never certainly did. But, if you can't play a Fletcher Cox level of snaps in the case of, I don't think they want to get Jordan, to a level, not quite that level. But they would like to get Jalen Carter to a Fletcher Cox level in his prime of just, rarely coming off the field. Can he get to that level? I don't know. But, that depends on, we're talking about very young people. Damo was talking about that. People tend to mature on their own, speeds and things like that. And there's no cure-all saying you're mature when you turn 25. Some people are, some people aren't.
Right.
But when you're a professional athlete, that's your job, right? You got nothing else to do. These guys, the rest of us have to live in a life where, we got to go to work and we got to do this and we got to live. And there's a bunch of things that maybe can keep you away from the gym or anything of that nature. These guys don't have that. I mean, that's their full-time job. So to expect conditioning is not a bad thing. And the Eagles should expect better conditioning from those two players. No question about it.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, this is literally, what they're paid to do. I love, reminds me of what Cilio says about this. He's like, I'm not going to give anybody a pat on the back for being in shape. Because I remember we were talking about this when AJ Brown posted that picture and he's looking like freaking Hulk out there. And I'm like, oh, AJ looks good. Maybe he'll have a big season. He's like, so what, dude? He's a freaking NFL receiver making $30 million. He should be in good shape. And I do agree with that. I mean, it's true.
Yeah,
right?
but there's different levels. Like, all right, point to other people in AJ Brown's shape. Look at other people. And AJ was talking about this in the off season. It's like, he knows, these are young men. They got some time off. They want to go out to, to a bar. They want to go do some things. They want to go have fun. In the case of certain players, maybe too much fun at certain times. And AJ was talking about it. I'm going to work out, I know what guys are doing. I'm going to work out. So even amongst NFL players, AJ Brown is in better shape than his peers generally. And that's part of it. That's when you turn into greatness. Ed and I are doing our top 25 list of top 25 best Eagles. It's pretty easy to guess who number one is this year. I won't give it away, but it's pretty easy to guess. And generally when guys get to that level, it's because they have a tremendous talent married with tremendous work ethic.
Yeah, good stuff.
Generally how it happens.
Yep, agreed. Johnny Mac, one other thing from the Kempski piece I want to hit on is number 10. He says Nick Sirianni's seat is toasty, which I think we all agree with at this point. But is it just inevitable that this is the way the team is set up right now? It's if it fails, Nick Sirianni is you're going to be your scapegoat at the end of this thing. I mean, you're not going to move on from a player, but it's inevitable that if they don't succeed, Nick Sirianni will be out like a light for the Philadelphia Eagles. Agree?
Yeah, I mean, that's, Sports Illustrated National, gave us all a bunch of questions to answer for the people that cover the individual teams. And one of them was best case scenario, worst case scenario. And the Eagles are, pretty easy. My best case was Super Bowl, obviously, because they're in that conversation. My worst case is the end of the Nick Sirianni era. The clock has started. We talked about it. The buffer is removed. Last year, you had the scapegoats being Brian Johnson, Sean Desai / Matt Patricia. They were scapegoated, maybe deservedly so. Certainly defensively, probably deservedly so. And I think the offense is more nuanced, but maybe everybody deservedly so. But it doesn't matter. Now that layer has been removed. So if you don't reach expectations again, and we already know what that looks like, you can't just make the playoffs and show up for the wild card weekend and get blown out. If that happens again, it's the end of the Nick Sirianni era.
What does that mean for the front office?
Not much. I mean, Howie's not going anywhere. Jeffrey's not handing the baton off, I don't believe, at this point, to Julian.
Any idea when that might happen, that baton handing? Jeffrey is.
No, I think that depends on Jeffrey's health. I mean,
I just don't know if he was thinking like, enjoy the last 10 years or 15 years or 20 years of my life not handling this, and I'll give it to Julian, or is he going Jerry Jones route? I'm going to run this thing until I'm dead. I didn't know if there was anything.
No, well, he's already part of the organization, Julian. So they're already starting, the process. I don't think it'll ever get to the point where Julian's running the day-to-day operations until, Jeffrey steps away from, and I think that only happens, and hopefully it never happens from the standpoint, we're all mortals, so it's going to happen eventually, but from a health standpoint or things of that nature, I think, he enjoys it. Maybe he starts doing a little bit less, but I think he's always going to be in charge of those big decisions like head coach hirings.
Yeah, so we'll see what Lurie ends up doing on this team. Let's get to our next commercial break. Coming up next, Ed Kratz, one of my favorite guests on Birds 365, always brings a good, lighthearted approach, brings great information, very knowledgeable, obviously, and has great opinions on the team, on the whole NFL, so good stuff. We'll have Ed Kratz coming up next on Birds 365. Make sure you guys like the show. Stay tuned, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Ed Krause from SI.com, one of the best in the business, covering the Philadelphia Eagles. Does a great job, always does a great job here on Birds 365 with us. Ed, how you doing on this Football Friday?
Good morning, guys. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday. It's always a happy Friday when I get to see my buddy Ed Krause. I guess we'll start. Jimmy Kempski, our other buddy who covers the Eagles with us, did his dumpster buyer series on the Eagles, which always gets a lot of talk, and Jimmy does a good job with that, and he's very funny when he does it, and it's part tongue-in-cheek. But there were some things in there that you look at and you say, yeah, this could be an issue. We've talked about a bunch of them, Ed, so I'm going to talk about one I haven't talked about yet with you, and that's linebackers. And Jimmy described it. The linebackers, as always. This is a team that always goes cheap on linebackers, it seems. The Eric Wilsons of the world, the Corey Nelsons of the world, insert name. So many of them this year. Again, two low-cost veterans who maybe have a little bit more upside than usual, though. I know Ed's more high on the linebackers than me. This time, at least you have some guys who maybe have some untapped potential in Devin White and Zach Bond, who got most of the first-team work in the offseason. Are they a little bit better at linebacker this year than typically?
Well, maybe in the name game they are. I mean, Devin White's a big name. Is he still a big talent? I think he is. And I think you wrote about this, John, recently, is he's got that chip on his shoulder because people are kind of writing him off. And, he's really rolled the dice on himself, gambling that he will have the kind of year that will lead to the big time contract or the big money contract over, 3 to 5 years that he thinks he deserves. He thought he deserved that in Tampa Bay. He didn't get it. I think that led to kind of his play last year, which was subpar and led to his benching. I think a lot of that had to do with his contract situation. He let it get inside his head, and that affected him. So, yeah, I am kind of high on the linebackers. I know if you're going to circle a position group on this team, that would be the first one I would circle as far as my concern level. But I think Devin White is going to prove us all wrong. And, Zach Bond, I'm kind of excited to see what he can do inside this Vic Fangio scheme. Is he the next Andrew Van Ginkel? We all know the love that Fangio had for that outside linebacker last year in Miami. I mean, maybe Zach Bond can kind of play a similar role to Van Ginkel. They used to be teammates at Wisconsin. Bond was the captain of that Badgers team. So, maybe he's a guy that can step up too. So I'm excited about the names that they have on this team, those two players in particular. Whether it translates on the field, we're not sure, but I think it will. I think the Eagles will be okay. Now, of course, if someone gets hurt, then you have a problem, because then what depth do you have? You have Nakobe Dean, who, has to stay healthy. And then after that, it's Ben Van Sumeren, Jeremiah Trotter,
Try.
You know,
I maintain, Ed, I said before you came on, I think their depth at linebacker isn't that bad from the perspective of they're all the same. In other words, if they lose a linebacker, if they lose AJ or Devontae, they're screwed, even though, Paris Campbell may be okay. Who knows what Johnny Wilson becomes? Maybe John Ross turns into something, but you can't replace people like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. If you're starting with Devin White and Zach Bond, and then you got to go to Nakobe Dean, and Ben Van Sumeren, I think it's basically the same. You're going to get the same level of production. So maybe in a weird way, the depth is a little bit better than usual, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Eagles are still trying to get it done at that position with, duct tape and baling wire.
Yeah.
Let's face it, that's one of the positions they don't seem to invest a lot in. And, the shame of it is they had a guy that they could keep here for a number of years.
It drives me insane, man.
I know. Every time we talk about linebackers, it comes back to TJ. And, he was the guy, and he didn't get that much to go to Chicago. The Eagles, I think, could have afforded that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they just let him up and go. And
I think it was PFF, Ed. They recently ranked the top linebacker groups in the NFL, and Chicago was, I believe, 2 or 3. And the Eagles
TJ.
Yeah. And the Eagles had him.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm glad you brought that up, because that takes me to Reed Blankenship. I'm not saying Reed's TJ yet, but I think he's a good player, Ed. And everybody keeps talking about Justin Simmons and Eddie Jackson. The Eagles did exactly what they did with TJ Edwards. Early, they bought out his restricted free agency year. They did the same thing with Reed Blankenship. Now, they didn't keep TJ long-term, but they bought out his restricted free agency year, which for Reed is next year, 2025. That indicates they believe in the player, at least in the short term. Why does everybody keep talking about Justin Simmons and Eddie Jackson?
Because it's June. Because, some
platforms
platforms need something to talk about.
Yeah, there we go.
That's
one.
Probably the easiest answer.
Yeah.
And Justin Simmons, because he played with Fangio, and Fangio was the head coach.
So did Eddie. Eddie was a good player with Fangio.
And so was Eddie. And you look at the depth at safety, and it's, you wonder, you talk about the depth at linebacker, and you kind of like it. Safety, it's a concern. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has got hurt these last 2 years. Reed Blankenship, I know he played, I think, 14 or 15 games, but he seemed to get hurt in game and came out of games. And then, Sidney Brown, you don't know what his availability is going to be. So, you look at that group, and it's like, man, do they have enough there? So that to me is probably why Simmons keeps coming up. And Eddie Jackson, they're talking about James Bradbury moving there. Avonte Maddox can be that 2-for-1 type player. But is that kind of the answer? The Eagles seem to think it is right now, but who knows how they'll feel in early August. Remember last August, they signed 2 linebackers a week or so in camp, thinking, we're looking around at our linebackers.
Somebody gets hurt, but that's what I'll say, Ed. If somebody gets hurt, it's a different conversation, CJ or Reed. Justin Simmons isn't coming up to be here to be a backup.
No.
And they wouldn't want him to be a backup because he's not going to play on special teams. So until something like that happens and there's an injury, then if he's out there, by all means, bring him in.
But what if there's an injury, say in, November 1st, one of these guys goes down, and then what do you have? I know it's not going to be Justin Simmons, but then you have to look around and see who's out there. I mean, they were desperate at linebacker last year when they brought in Shaquille Leonard, a guy that shouldn't even have been playing with his back surgery. He just had started walking again at the end of June, a month before going to the Colts training camp. I mean, that's a guy that needed time off. But the Eagles were so desperate, they had to bring him in week 13 because they had nobody else to play the spot. You don't want to get stuck in a position like that again at safety this year.
Quick thing. Sorry, Zander. But
no, go ahead, Mike.
Here's what I'll say about Shaq Leonard. I have never met a human being who could clean things more effectively than my wife until Shaq Leonard. His locker was pristine the moment the season was over. Not even one speck of dust. Ed Kratz, he was out the door.
Yeah,
that's what I say about Shaq Leonard.
And then you get down a few stalls to Jason Kelsey, and he's got boxes upon boxes stacked up.
Jason gets a lot of free shit. Yeah,
he does
gets a lot of free shit.
Yeah, so you're right though. Shaq knew he wasn't coming back, and he's still not coming back. I know he's talking about trying to come back, but to me, I think retirement is more what's going to happen with Shaq Leonard than anything else.
Yeah. Ed, I want to walk you through what's going on in my head when I think about Vic Fangio and this defense, and I'm starting to wonder if collectively as a whole, not only fans, but even some reporters, even, people inside the organization are maybe putting too much stock in Vic Fangio. And it's not about Vic Fangio. On the defensive tackle room, you lose Fletcher Cox. Now you have Jordan and Jalen and Milton, but they were here last year as well. You could argue that's a net loss there at defensive tackle. On the edge room, you lose Hassan Reddick, you replace him with Bryce Huff. The rest stays the same. Okay, we'll call that an even match. Linebacker room, you could maybe say +1 because I think they're a better core this year, even with the unproven guys and Devin White, and Zach Bond. Safeties, I think you got a little better with CJ Gardner-Johnson. Cornerbacks, a lot of unproven young guys. Like, to me, the defense it's kind of the same talent level as we had last year. And everybody's talking about getting to a top 15 or top 18 defense. Vic Fangio is great, but he's not playing the games. Like, is it unfair to expect this defense to elevate that much when really it kind of looks maybe the same and in some spots a little worse? I mean, I think Bryce Huff is a little worse than Hassan. I think losing Fletcher Cox is a hit. Is it fair to, for us all to assume that Vic Fangio is going to have the impact to get this defense to a top 15 or top 18 defense?
Well, I mean, that's what the Eagles are hoping. He's a veteran guy who has gotten defenses into the top 10. He had the Miami Dolphins last year in the top 10. And you look at their talent, and they have good talent as well. It was a lot of young talent. And he was able to mold that group into a top 10 defense. So I'm not sure he's overrated at this point. I mean, he needs to get to know his personnel. When we met with him in May 3rd, whatever the date was, he had to pull a note sheet out of his back pocket when we asked him about linebackers.
How he giving me? Yeah.
He's Joe Biden us. Yeah, he had to bring out the roster.
So
linebackers. Let me look.
Hang on a second. Who do you got? As he's looking at his cheat sheet. But I listen, I don't think he's overrated. I think he's going to be kind of the linchpin to this defense. And he's an old school guy, and if players can take to that old school coaching, which to a man this spring, they all said they could, but we'll see once the hits the fan, if they actually can withstand the way he coaches them or stand up to the way that he coaches them. But I don't think he's overrated. I think this defense is really going to depend on how Fangio gets them to play and, how his assistants, guys like Clint Hurt and Bobby King and Christian Parker, all new guys, are able to coach up their position groups. And then he's going to have to get to know that personnel, and he's going to have to figure out ways to get them to play to their strengths. And I think he's been doing this a very long time, and I think he'll find a way to do it. There's no question to me the Eagles have the talent on the defensive side of the ball, and now they need the kind of coach like Vic Fangio is to bring it all together, to identify the talent and what their strengths are. So I don't think he's overrated. I think a big key to this team is going to be how Vic Fangio gets this defense to play.
Yeah, see, the big thing for me is I don't think he's overrated. I think I more disagree with you on the talent aspect. I mean, it's the first thing Vic said. I need talented players. My scheme can be what it is. I need talented players, and I don't see the improvement in talent on defense on the defensive side of the ball. I know you got a lot of young guys and you drafted 2 corners, but they're unproven. So that's my point in that. I don't know how much better he can get without the improved talent. We'll see. I guess we'll see what it is. Go ahead, Johnny Mac.
You got the best roster in football. Come on, Zander. You're gonna start getting some of my hate.
I think I think this team did improve. I know it's unproven with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, but I think they will play a role. I think Devin White is a guy that Vic Fangio will be able to utilize. I think you're going to see some sacks from Devin White. I think he's an upgrade over Zach Cunningham. And Jordan Davis, another year in this defense or, in this city. Jalen Carter, one of the best probably defensive tackles in the league, top 5 anyway. And Bryce Huff, a 10.5 sack guy. I don't think he's an upgrade over Hassan Reddick either, but he's a younger version of him. And he's a cheaper version. I mean, we don't even know if Reddick's going to show up for training camp at this point. But I just think the talent has been upgraded, and I know we haven't seen it from the young rookie cornerbacks. You still have Slay out there. Johnny talked about Reed Blankenship, being kind of one of their better players. I agree. I think, when you look at this roster, I was looking at the guys that are 25 and younger, and they have 16 guys 25 and younger. So it's a young defense. No, actually, they're not all defense, but Reed Blankenship's 25. Jalen Carter's 23. Jordan Davis is 24. I think he'll be 25 this year. So, I mean, it's a young defense, and you don't know exactly, what that bar is, where they can reach. But I think that the potential is certainly there, and I think Vic will find a way to get it out of them.
Yeah, I think the thing with Vic, they're going to be taught better, they're going to be prepared better, and right there, I think you're going to have an incremental improvement just from that alone. But cheap plug, Ed and I are in the middle of our annual top 25 Eagles, top 25 best pure football players on the Eagles. And I think we both said, Ed, it was more difficult to do this year. When you get to that demarcation line, and we're in it, you're going to see number 20 today. And I won't give it away, but it's a backup player on some kind of projection, really, more than anything else. I do think it was tougher for me this year, and there's not as many clear home runs. And maybe from 20 to 35, it's a lot of similar. And I think you found the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I think the bottom, maybe from 12 to 25, it may have been difficult, but I think the top 10 was pretty identifiable. Yeah. I mean, Jason Kelsey, I think, was our number 1 best Eagle last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think I had him ranked number 1. I don't know.
You had him ranked number 1. I had AJ ranked number 1.
You had AJ 1. So I think this year it's a little more clear without Kelsey there, without Fletcher Cox there, as to who maybe that top 5, 6, 7 is. But, it was down, like you mentioned, 15 to 35. I mean, they were all kind of like, all right, what do we do? Do we put up the dartboard and throw darts at these names? But we did the best we could. I thought we got it right. Our first 4 players that, from 25 to 22, was it? I think the first 4 were cornerbacks.
All corners.
Yeah, all corners. I mean, that.
And I had to promise somebody when Avonte Maddox was 22, and I said, I promise a non-cornerback is coming. And it finally, Brandon Graham was 21.
Yeah.
And, Brandon's probably better than that, but he doesn't play a lot these days at 35. And is he 36 now? And obviously this is his final season. So that factors into it as well. But
if you look at our list from last year, I think we only had 3 cornerbacks total in the top 25.
Yeah, well, they're much more. It's all projection. Let's be honest. Kelee Ringo started it. He was number 25. That's all projection, But when I hear AJ Brown say he's going to be a good player, that holds some weight with me. I don't know how you feel. Now, guys are in front of the camera. They're always going to laud their teammates. They're always going to laud, unless you're Jalen Hurts with the head coach. You're always going to laud your teammates and coaches. But AJ's very honest behind the scenes, and he seems really legitimately high on Kelee Ringo. That holds some weight with me. Obviously, Quinyon Mitchell has talent. Cooper DeJean has talent. They got a lot of talent at cornerback. Yeah. There might be some hiccups, Ed, but I'd rather have the talent and then get through the hiccups than the opposite.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, that to me is, I know we have a few more weeks to talk about this before the Eagles open up training camp, but that position battle at cornerback to me is going to be fun to watch how it all, separates itself. And it's been a long time since we said that. I mean, but this year there's going to be some jobs that are available at that cornerback spot. And I'm not just talking about the starting role opposite Darius Slay. I mean, you're going to be seeing guys battling to make this roster. Guys like Eli Ricks and Josh Jobe and Zach McPherson. I mean, where do they all shake out in this mix? So that to me is one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to at training camp. In addition to, you mentioned the backup player who is our next player that we're going to feature in our top 25 countdown. I'm excited to see if he can't take the step and become a starter.
Yeah, he might be a starter. He might end up being a starter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's a good roster. But that was one of Jimmy's things as well. The depth is on paper doesn't look quite as good, except maybe at corner. I think they're set up well at quarterback. I think Kenny Pickett's a good backup quarterback. I really do. I think he's better than Marcus Mariota. I think they're better there. I don't think they're bad at running back. I think a lot of the fans disagree with me, but I think Kenny Gainwell's a solid player. I think there's decent depth there. Getting, Mekhi Becton certainly helps the depth on the offensive line. Defensive front, not as strong as we're used to, but I think there's potential. You mentioned Bryce Huff, so let's focus on Bryce Huff. I got a lot of confidence in that guy. I don't think there's going to be any question. Like one of the things with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, which I think is relevant, we're concerned about their conditioning. They have to be in better condition. With Bryce Huff, yeah, he only played 480 snaps, I think, with the Jets last year. But I have no doubt he can play 800. That from a conditioning standpoint. Yeah, are they going to be effective? That I can't tell you. I think they're going to be effective. Where are you on Bryce Huff as far as being a big-time pass rusher on this team?
Yeah, I think the pass rush skills are there. I think that his confidence level, that now that he has posted double digits in sacks, I think will be pretty high. My concern with him is just against the run. Will he be able to, set the proverbial edge that everybody talks about? You got to set the edge in the run game. Will he be able to hold up in the run game? Will he be able to stay on the field on first down? On running downs, will he be able to be out there? He better be. You want him to be a 3-down player. So that's what the Eagles are going to do. They're going to play him 3 downs. The Jets never did, and I don't think it was because they didn't think he could do it. I just think they had immense talent on that defense, and they didn't need talent, to play. Yeah. So I think like Zander said, maybe he's a little bit of a step down from Hassan Reddick, but that's what we think maybe now going into the season, but I think he can, maybe be better than Hassan Reddick was. We'll see. I mean, certainly they're really counting heavily on him to be the guy here over the next couple years. 25, I guess he's 26, maybe he's 25. He'll turn 26. Young guy. You hope that, better days are ahead for him. Kind of like when the Eagles signed Josh Sweat years ago to an extension. They signed him on potential. And, that's kind of what they did with Huff, is they saw a little bit of that potential with his 10.5 sack season last year. And, they hope they get more seasons just like that from him. I have no problem with Bryce Huff. I think he's going to be just fine in this defense. I think you're going to see him drop too. I think, Fangio is going to drop him.
People are going to get upset by that.
I know, but he can do it. He can do it. He has the skill set. And who else can do it is Jalix Hunt. I was looking at his numbers. I mean, he had some pass breakups at Houston Christian last year. I mean, that's a guy that I think Vic Fangio kind of really wanted to have in his defense.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week. With Jalix Hunt. Everybody just has put him off to the side and just says, all right, they're going to red shirt Jalix Hunt. And that's probably what's going to happen, but why not? Maybe he's a natural. I said that last week. I mean, if you can rush the passer, you can rush the passer, and they'll find a role for you. I don't expect him to be a 3-down player, but if he can get to the quarterback on third down, on third and long, why not?
or be a curveball in coverage. I mean, remember his career started as a safety at Brown.
Yeah.
Places.
Cornell.
It was Cornell. That's it. Yeah.
Ivy
League. Yeah. One of those Ivies. But so he's another guy that is going to be an interesting watch when training camp opens. I mean, obviously you got Gene and Mitchell and they'll get all the headlines, but I want to see how Hunt, once the pads come on, all the players talk about once the pads come on, it becomes a different game. And he's one that I want to see how that transitions when they put the pads on.
Ed, let's talk offense. What's your best case scenario offense, worst case scenario for offense? I mean, we're talking about talent on defense. This is not a problem for Kellen Moore. It's more the other way. I have so much talent. How do I use it all? What's your best case scenario for the offense this year? And then on the flip side, if it doesn't go well, what's the worst case scenario?
Well, I think, worst case would be, health. If the health doesn't hold up, I mean, that's kind of an easy one, right? If like John said earlier, AJ or Devontae, if they get hurt, they're in a world of trouble. Like we saw AJ go out, early in that Giants game last year in the Meadowlands, and the Eagles couldn't do anything really offensively. And then the playoff game, Devontae Smith showed up, but he was the only one, but they never developed the third guy. So they didn't have any other options. So they better do a better job of making sure that there are going to be players ready to step in should something happen to AJ or Devontae. So that probably would be the worst case if you start losing guys. Then you're in trouble. Even at center, I mean, you're not going to have. I mean, Jason Kelce started 156 games. Cam Jurgens, let's just see if he can get through 17.
Yeah,
because if he goes
5
down,
games last year.
Yeah. If he goes down, then what? I mean, you have Brett Toth working as the backup. Maybe Matt Hennessy can do it, but
Max Sharping, he's here.
Max Sharping, he's one of your breakout guys, I think, John. Right, Max Sharping.
Well, they brought him in for a reason. When they signed Max Sharping, because they signed him late. They signed him in June, and we're still in June, before minicamp, I believe. He started 38 games, so there was a couple things about that signing that struck me as like, does that say Matt Hennessy's not healthy? Does that say they want more competition for Tyler Steen with a more legitimate guard prospect than Mekhi Becton? I don't know, but it says something. The guy started 38 stinking NFL games. Yeah. I feel more comfortable with him than Brett Toth playing center.
Yeah, but again, that's worst case. If you have to go to one of those guys, that means Cam Jurgens is hurt, and that's a bad situation, I think, for the offense. And then, maybe the best case would be how quickly Jalen Hurts can pick up this new offense Kellen Moore's putting down. He said 95% of it's new. We've heard other reports now that, hey, he kind of overstated it. He just threw a number out there. It's not 95%. That was just an arbitrary number, but I tend to doubt it. I think he was speaking some truth there. It is all new for him.
Well, I think he was talking about the terminology.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's new. Yeah. And, he's going to have to pick it up quickly. And that would be the best case, is if he picks it up quickly. It's more of his offense now too, right? Didn't he say that, he's being able to take what he likes and build on that?
I wish I wrote about that with the pass. I think it's a perfect opportunity. You were never going to take it away from Jason Kelce for obvious reasons. But Jason handled pass protection, and he kind of called the game from that perspective. And I've been bringing up those Tom Brady clips that were out there about, sort of running a modern NFL offense. I want my quarterback to be in charge of that. And I think it's a perfect opportunity to, now that Jason's gone, because Cam doesn't, I think he can do it. I think he's a smart player. Everybody says he has a high football IQ. But my point is, I want it in the quarterback's hands, Ed. And this is a perfect opportunity to do it. But Kellen Moore kind of hinted it was going to be Cam Jurgens. He didn't flat out say it, but he foreshadowed it's going to be Cam Jurgens. I don't like that. I want Tom Brady. Now, I don't expect him to be Tom Brady, but I think you should be striving to get as close to that as possible.
Yeah, and maybe he'll take steps. I don't, we'll see if Jalen can do that, but getting back to Zander's best case, to me, the ultimate best case, we talk about Hurts and adjusting to this offense, would be Saquon Barkley. Best case for me is if Saquon Barkley stays healthy, plays all 17 games, rips off 5, 6, 7 games of over 100 yards rushing and contributes in the pass game and pushes his way towards a 1,500-yard, season between catching and running. I think that's the ultimate case is Saquon Barkley.
If he doesn't get to 1,500 yards, that's a disappointment for me. And I'm not even high on the guy because
I know.
Well, last year DeAndre was at 1160 something, and I think 300 more in the passing game. So that's 1460 right there. That's DeAndre Swift.
Okay.
The year before, Miles was at 1259. He had less in receiving, probably 200. So he was at 1450.
Yeah.
So he better be at 1,500.
All right. Let me reevaluate that then. Let's say 1,800. Let's say 2,000.
Right,
Let's see if he can get to a 2,000.
Well, if he can get to 2,000
from line of scrimmage. I mean, that to me is the ultimate best case. If Saquon Barkley comes in and is able to take some of the pressure off Jalen Hurts and that pass game and is able to be used in the pass game more so than we've seen, in years past in this offense, then to me, that's the best case. And the Eagles will be well on their way to, the NFC Championship game.
I don't even care about the numbers really for Saquon. I care about the situational impact.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think he can really provide this team something that they didn't have, especially, late in games when you have a lead and you got to close it out, or even just, early setting up the pass if they're struggling coming out of the gate and you don't want to come out and have 3 and outs. You know what I mean? Like that made life harder on the defense. So the situational impact for me is much more important than 1,500 or 1,800 yards.
Yeah.
It doesn't, either way, it doesn't bother
Good point.
me.
Yeah. Everybody talks about that third receiver. The Eagles haven't been able to find a third receiver. Last year it was Olamide Zacchaeus and Julio Jones. Who's the third one? I'm forgetting. Oh, Quez Watkins.
Yeah.
This year it's, maybe it's Paris Campbell, maybe it's Sean Ross, but Nick went through that convoluted explanation, if you remember, in the offseason, Ed, about, well, maybe it's Dallas Goedert, and Dallas is the third receiver. Maybe it's Saquon, maybe it's one of the third receiver guys. Whomever fills that spot, they're not getting a lot of targets because if AJ and DeMonte are healthy, you'd be an idiot not to give them most of the traffic. So to me, it's about what Zander said. It's about impact. Are you going to make the play when the play is there? Right. Too often, Quez Watkins didn't make the play.
No.
When Saquon gets an opportunity to make that wheel route catch, is he going to make the play? And if he does that, I think then maybe you start cooking with gas. But, it's AJ and DeMonte's offense. And it should be, by the way. Should be.
Yeah. Again, Saquon's here to excel in the situations, like Zander said, and to make the play that when it comes to him, he makes it. But I think he's going to be used more than we think at this point. I really do. I think, they want to take some of the pressure off of that passing game with Jalen Hurts.
Well, running the football, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're going to use him quite a bit. And it's like Brandon Graham, I think, said, once you give him a little crack of daylight, I mean, that guy's a home run hitter. He can go a long way. And he should see some open lanes in this offense, the way it's operated, the way the offensive line plays.
All we do is talk about the skill position guys, but the offensive line makes it all run.
Yes.
Those guys are the most important part. And Lane Johnson's still really good. Jordan Mailata's really good. Landon Dickerson's really good. I get no even worry. I don't know if you get this feeling, Ed. Nobody's even worried about Cam Jurgens at center. I'm not saying he's going to be Jason Kelce, but they know he's going to be good. Nobody's even worried about Cam Jurgens. And so it's Tyler Steen. Can he handle the job? If not, is it going to be Mekhi Becton or somebody else? Still a really good offensive line.
Max Sharping, John.
Max Sharping.
Yeah.
Max Sharping.
I'm a little worried about Cam. I'll be honest.
I'm worried
with
about the
you.
non-physical stuff, right? Like, I think he's going to be great physically. I'm curious to see how he picks up the other stuff Kelsey did. And then, John, to your point, like the pre-snap reads and stuff, you say you want that to be on Jalen.
Yeah.
I keep saying it's going to be on Cam. Like, what does that dynamic look like? It's a different guy for Jalen. Is he trying to do more? Can Cam do it at the level that Jason did? I'm more concerned with that. And it's not even a concern. It's just kind of that's what I'm looking out for. But physically, I feel pretty dang good about Cam Jurgens.
Yeah. It's just going to be very weird looking out there.
Well, yeah.
Seeing Cam Jurgens at center, no Kelsey. We've seen it for 156 straight games. We saw it for 12 years. It's going to be really weird to see that. And even weirder in the locker room when we don't see Kelsey, talking in the back of the locker room. Cam Jurgens is now in his locker. And I don't know. I have some concerns. I do. I mean, I know this is what his third year.
Same thing with AJ when I was talking about Kaylee Ringo. Stoutland, he tempered. He said, last year I had concerns when him moving to right guard. He basically said, I know he can play center. That carries some weight with me when Stoutland. Yeah. Because Stoutland's honest. I always go back to Jordan's first start. He was very honest. He's like, I hope he's ready. I don't know. He said, I don't know. With Jurgens, he said flat out, Ed, I know he can play center.
Yeah.
So that holds some weight with me.
Yeah. Does it hold weight that he compared Steen to Brandon Brooks a little bit too? I mean, that to me would seem like, wow, that was very uncharacteristic.
I prefer to ignore that one. That's too
much. Yeah, I don't know how honest he was with that one, but
that's too much.
I thought so too. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, he's given ultimate confidence in Cam Jurgens, and
I like that Ed point out my hypocrisy. Yeah.
It was too easy. It was a low-lying fruit, John.
Low-hanging fruit. Well done.
Ed, thanks for joining the show, man. Great as always. Make sure everybody follows Ed on Twitter and read all his work at SI.com. One of the best in the business covering the Eagles. Ed, thank you, man.
Oh, thanks, Zander. All right, guys, have a great weekend.
Thanks, bud.
You too, Ed. There's Ed Krause joining us on Birds 365. One of my favorite guests. Always brings a good comedic relief, lighthearted, good opinions. And he's obviously very intelligent. Knows a lot about the team. Knows a lot about football. Really good stuff from Ed Krause. Johnny Mac, just a couple minutes left to play here. We'll skip out on the final break. It's Friday, June 28th. Any weekend plans for you, Johnny Mac? Anything on the agenda for Johnny Mac you feel like?
It's good. I may go down to Milton Williams is having a youth football camp in South Jersey this afternoon. Devontae Smith's having his celebrity softball game up in Allentown. That I will not be going. There's not enough media to make that trek, media availability. But guys are doing some things. I may stop down there. My wife's sick though, so that's complicating things. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
I'll send prayers up for your wife. Hopefully she feels better. Good shows this week, Johnny Mac. Feeling any different on this Friday than you were on Monday going into the year? We had a lot of good conversation this week. We talked about smiles. We talked about all sorts of stuff this week. Feeling any different about the Eagles season after the week this week?
No, I mean, nothing's going on this week as far as the actual game. I don't give my. I've been pretty honest about my Jalen Hurts. I don't want him to change his personality. I think it's one of those things where, he did a bad job handling a simple question in a press conference, and you can move on from there. Hopefully, he learns from it. Make the layup when the layup is there. But I think people have taken it to a ludicrous degree. And I think that's Jaws. And Jaws, obviously, Jaws is very close to the organization. They ask his input when they're talking about head coaches and things like that. So I do take some, stuff when he talks about, people in the organization believing that, but I think people in the organization are wrong if they believe that. I mean, you don't want people changing their personality. Certainly you come off as phony. Everybody can't be Brandon Graham. I mean, that's Brandon Graham. You can't point at Brandon and say, be like Brandon. Doesn't work that way. So, could he? There's a wide berth there. Could he handle a simple question better? Yes. Should he act like somebody he's not? No. There's a wide berth there.
Agree with that. Good week of shows, everybody. I want to thank everybody for being here. 61 likes right now, guys. Let's try and get those likes up if you are on here watching, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Niners all day is even in here. Our resident 49er fan, somebody I'm appreciative.
A lot of live viewers. We should have more favorites than
Yeah, a lot of them coming from other platforms. Still good number on YouTube, but everybody liked the show on YouTube. Appreciate everybody being here. Niners all day, as I mentioned. Our resident Niner fan, James Jones, our resident Commander fan. I keep saying it. We got a Commander fan. We got a Cowboy fan. Every once in a while, a couple of them check in. We got a 49er.
I don't think there's any Giant fans left.
There might not be any left, Johnny Mac. I mean, most of the fans.
Well, the Eagles took their best players, so which is actually factually.
Yeah, maybe they're just hiding right now. Maybe they're just
not
hiding.
Lawrence. That's the Giants' best player, but they did not take him.
What's his name? Where's Kevin Savard? He asked me up here, Zander, you having a wood sale? Kevin, they weren't our trees, but boy, I have like a little e-bike and I love driving around on it. So last night after I was done work after Celia, it was like 7 p.m. I'm driving around because they had cut up all the trees. That was a lot of lumber. Let me tell you, that was a lot of lumber out there that's laying on the ground outside. So Kevin, if you want to swing by, man, maybe we'll sneak a couple in your truck, or we can load up my truck and I'll drive it home for you. And we'll have a little barbecue with the meats. But thank you guys all for being here. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. Make sure you drop a like on the show. And we will see you Monday. Johnny Mac, good week of shows, man. I'll catch you on Monday. Hope you have an awesome weekend. Hope everybody in the chat has an awesome weekend as well.
Yep. We're getting closer, so enjoy it. Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, much less than 30 days and just 70 days away, everybody, until the Eagles kick off. So can't come soon enough, and it will be here before we know it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on Birds 365. Stay tuned for the National Football Show coming up later today. See you on Monday, everybody. We appreciate you.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.